Hello, everyone. I'm Dijon,
I'm Amir. Sorry, I'm eating.
and welcome to the Mustacast, the podcast about the art of storytelling and how it's used across different mediums. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see our channel grow, and to click the notification bell so that you're notified when we post. As usual, we'll start with media consuming. Amir, you can go ahead.
All right, so I saw the Batman again. It's still just as amazing. Honestly, it went by quicker this time. I didn't feel the 3 hours the first time I saw it, and I really didn't feel the three hours the second time I saw it. I'm going back to go see it in about 2 hours again for a third time, and I'm gonna see what happens then. But yeah, um, hmm. I've been playing Elden Ring like crazy because I really love that game. Um, I played my first official full Dungeons and Dragons session about 2 hours ago was when we finished. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I feel like that's about it. Honestly, when you work full time, you really don't have as much time to consume content as you would have previously liked, which is a little weird. Oh, also, I watched that Hogwarts Legacy State of Play, which I know we're going to talk about at some point, at least 15 times. It was great. Anyway, yeah, I think that's about it though.
I've only seen it twice, but yeah, that's definitely going to be like the bulk of the podcast at the very end in the video game section. So for me, I watched Sorry to Bother You because it was added to Netflix. It was on Hulu for a long time. It was in my watch list. But one day I was kind of just, I'm sure everybody's felt this where it's like there's so much content to watch, but for some reason you don't feel like watching any of it. It's weird. I was in a moment like that, so I was just like, I'm just gonna start watching it, and if it's good, I'll keep watching it. And it was great, and I loved it. And it's also very strange, but it's a good movie. It's starring Lakeith Stanfield. Speaking of which, Atlanta season 3 is coming soon, I think this summer, so I'm excited for that as well. I watched Nobody, which is a film written by the same person that wrote the John Wick films. And it was really good. A lot of dope action as you can expect from because there's a lot of the same team. And it's essentially this dude he seems like a very unassuming kind of just regular guy with a wife and two kids. And his kids, well, his son specifically, think he's like boring, and he's being like a white teenage kid, stereotypical type you see in films. And his wife seems iffy on him too, but his daughter really loves him. But he, like, under all of that, he was like he's some type of secret agent. Like, he worked for the military. Like, they don't ever say specifically what he did. Actually, I think they do. They called him, I think, actually, I'm not going to spoil that because I want people to watch this, but it's really good. It's the premise isn't too dissimilar to John Wick in a lot of ways. Like, a dude who used to kill people for money, and now he doesn't, and now he's kind of being forced into a situation where he has to kill some people again. It's a good movie. But as I'm watching it, the only thing I could think is, in this movie, more so than John Wick, up until the very end, where there was a big action scene. It felt a lot more grounded than John Wick, and John Wick is already somewhat grounded. But even though John Wick is still grounded, it's still exaggerated for the sake of entertainment. And Nobody, there was this one fight scene on a bus that felt like a real fight. Like it was extremely well choreographed and fun to watch while also feeling real. And as I'm watching that, I think the team who worked on John Wick needs to work on a Batman film. I need them to be part of the action scenes instead coordinating and fight coordinating for a Batman film, because I think that style of fighting would suit, especially the current Batman that we have. I think they would do really well, because I said it before, I don't dislike the fighting in the Batman, but it's not particularly good. It serves its purpose, and I think it could be much better. And like I said, I don't think anything has topped or even touched the warehouse scene in Batman vs Superman. And I'm trying to get something close to that, not necessarily in the way that the fight was, but in terms of how it made me feel. And I'm riding that high. I'm trying to get that again. I'm trying to reach that level again. I watched the Pixar animated film Turning Red on Disney Plus. It was pretty good. It's nice to see Pixar experimenting with different animation styles. There's this one scene where the character is jumping across rooftops. It's gorgeous, and that's about it. It's just gorgeous. This is a really dope scene. So I watched the first episode. I guess technically not the first episode of season 8 of The Flash. It's technically the 6th episode. Because of the crossover, some kind of crossover event. It was a mainly Flash event, but it crossed over with other stuff. And the first episode was good so far. I feel like they're definitely. I said first episode, actually. I watched the first 2 episodes because I forgot the first episode featured Bart and Nora and didn't have Barry in it until the very end. So in my mind, it wasn't an episode of The Flash for some reason. The first episode was really good. And it made me want The Flash, when it ends, to just completely, even though Arrow promised this and never did it, to go into the future and just follow Bart and Nora, because their dynamic is dope, and that episode was great. The second episode was also really good. It feels like they're trying to really recapture the flame of season 1 in a lot of ways. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see where this season goes. I finally finished up Uncharted Lost Legacy on the PS5 remastered version. And I was waiting until I finished Lost Legacy until I made a decision to purchase Elden Ring. And I finally made it. I got it physically. The first physical game I bought in over 2 years at this point. The last one actually was, funny enough, probably Uncharted Lost Legacy, because I remember ordering both Uncharted Lost Legacy and Resident Evil 2 Remake around the same time. And those were the last 2 games I bought physically. So the reason I got it physically is because I wanted the option to trade it back into GameStop just in case I don't like it, which I don't know if I don't think that's going to happen, but I wanted the option, just in case. And it's also the first game I bought physically for PS5, so that's cool. I literally only did the tutorial, and when I tried to walk out the door, they said you have to wait for the rest of the download, and I was like, oh, okay. And it's definitely been done for probably about like 20 minutes now, but I knew I had to record the podcast, so I didn't start playing it again. Moving on to current events. I mean, you're definitely gonna have to play Elden Ring. I promise you. This time, I will actually play the game with you, Amir. Whenever you're free, because you're a very busy man nowadays.
Multiplayer works a little weird. It's not going to be able to be the same. We can't co-op the whole game together. I'm telling you that now.
I know. I've been watching. The reason I want to play, I finally decided to play the game is because I've been watching RDC World stream it, and watching them stream it, specifically, especially when they play it co-op, is so fun. I know how the co-op works, but it's co-op nonetheless, and it's still a thing that can happen, and it'll be fun. I'll definitely be playing co-op with my little brother because he also convinced me to get the game. He's 10 on the dot. He turned 10 the beginning of this month, and he's literally been playing video games since he was born. And he's been playing it, and he called me one day and he was like, Dijon, do you have Elden Ring yet? And I was like, no. I'm not sure about it. And he was like, because I'm stuck on this boss. He was on the first boss, and I need your help. And I was like, all right, I might get it just so I can play with you. I got it now, so I'm gonna end up playing it with him eventually. Yeah. So current events. Not current events, excuse me, animation. Tekken Bloodlines. I should have sent you this trailer, but there's a Netflix animated series being produced that's in the Tekken universe, and the art style is very similar to like Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball Fighters, which me and you talk about all the time. That animation is beautiful. And it's I was gonna say it's kind of a similar art style that not Arcane, but League of Legends game, the fighting game that they're making. I forget what it's called. That it's a similar art style to that as well. And I'm intrigued mostly for the animation. I do like Tekken. I don't play it a lot, but I do enjoy it when I do play it. My favorite character is his name Kazuya? Yeah, because I always get confused because Jin's last name is Kazuma, and his father's name is Kazuya, but they have different last names, obviously. But yeah, I'm intrigued by the art style. It looks very much like it when they're sitting completely still. You would think it's 2D, but the moment they move, you can notice kind of the 3D elements. But for the most part, it looks gorgeous, and I'm excited to see how this type style of animation evolves. But speaking of this type of animation, Arcane won 9 Annie Awards. They won the award for best writing, best voice acting, best character design, best character animation, best TV/media, and for general audiences, best production design, best storyboarding, best direction, and best effects. Arcane might be like my second favorite animated series of all time after Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it was so good. And I watched it 3 times. When I was hearing about all these awards and I was seeing all the posts of people talking about it, I wanted to watch it a fourth. But when I watched it a fourth time, I kind of want to watch it with someone else. So I'm gonna wait. But man, Arcane is so good, and it deserves every single one of those awards. It's gonna do for like animated series what Spider-Verse did for all of animation, because obviously both of these series, in terms of the what is it? It's a 3D animation with 2D textures over top of the models, as well as 2D effects. And another movie recently is also using it, and that's Puss in Boots 2, which I watched the trailer for only because I saw somebody retweet it and talk about how it was using that type of art style, which I expected just the usual DreamWorks art style, the 3D animated.
I am way too old to be as excited as I am about that Puss in Boots.
Exactly, bro. Here's the thing, though. All of the Shrek movies in general have always been super adult. Like they've never felt like kids movies. They've never felt like kids movies, in my opinion, if I'm being honest.
It's been all over a decade since I've seen any Shrek movie, and it's been even longer since I've seen the Puss in Boots movie, the first Puss in Boots movie. But like, I believe it that Shrek is super adult. I don't remember whether or not the first Puss in Boots movie was super adult. All I know is that that movie has me so hyped, and I'm way too old to get this excited about it.
It for me, I also like the character of Puss in Boots in itself, and it looks like it'll be funny, and the action looks like it'll be good, and animation is beautiful. Everything about it is just I want to watch it. It looks good. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters or not. I might wait for it to hit streaming, but I'm definitely gonna check it out. But other like movies and shows to use that type of art style were the Mitchell versus Machines, which is made by the same Sony Animation Studios that did Spider-Verse, Arcane, of course. Another DreamWorks movie called Bad Guys is coming out soon, and Puss in Boots too. And Avatar Studio, we talked about a few months ago, is planning on using the art style similar to that for their future projects. So yeah, I'm happy to see this art style really spread like this, and I'm excited to see where it goes and how it evolves. But that leads me to the question: what IPs would you like to see make something using that type of art style? For me, because it was originally used by Spider-Verse to mimic old comic books and the halftone shading and things like that, I definitely want to see it in more comic book animated films. Specifically, DC needs to really lean into their animated universes and start putting some big bucks into it. Honestly, I feel like maybe this upcoming, what is it, the Super Pets movie? Maybe if that movie does really well, they might be convinced to start making more animated projects, because that's where they excel, in my opinion. Their animated stuff that has no peer in terms of comic books. Only more recent stuff like Invincible is really touching it. How was what are anything you would like to see in this type of art style?
I'm glad you asked. So, not specifically the fighters art style, not specifically like the fighters Guilty Gear art style, though I do really like the art style. And if I had to see something animated in that art style, I would want a DNF show in that art style, which I know DNF is still a very new property as far as like the fighting game sphere goes. And like there's not a lot about story, at least that I'm aware of about it. I like the characters enough. I like the designs of the characters enough and the design of the world enough and like the powers and everything enough that I'm like, I would like to see that show. But in more of a Spider-Verse style, I want a super heavy comic book, not necessarily taking place in the 70s, but like 70s stylized heroes for hire show that starts off with specifically just Iron Fist and Luke Cage, and then in later seasons brings in Colleen Wing and Misty Knight and Shang-Chi in like main roles. That is what I want to see. I want
That
that
sounds
so bad.
that sounds real dope. That sounds great. I'm not gonna lie.
Like that would just be that would be perfect. Like I don't understand why that hasn't been done already. Like that just sounds like a moneymaker. I don't understand. It sounds like a moneymaker. It sounds like a way to make. I'm not gonna say like C-list, like B-list characters. I'll say like B-list characters. Because as much as I hate it, they are kind of B-list characters. Less
I would say
now than like,
nowadays, Luke Cage he's definitely not B. He's C, maybe B. He's probably B. Luke Cage,
I'd say the I'd say the only characters that I mentioned that are really C tier still would probably be Misty Knight and Colleen Wing.
yeah. Shang-Chi is he's A tier at this point. Because
I'd
yeah,
say he's a low A tier. I wouldn't necessarily
he's
say like
definitely low A
A
tier,
tier.
but he's definitely within the next 5 years gonna become a solidified A tier character.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like an animated series like this, like a couple years ago, that would have solidified all of these characters as solid, at the very least, high B tier, low A tier characters. Like people don't realize, like animated shows, especially with like the thought and time put into them, really do wonders for these characters. Like that's why people are like, oh, but the character's not popular enough to hold their own show. But they could be. They could be if they
It's
put
part
the
of the
time
reason
and
why
energy.
characters like Nightwing is still so popular because of Young Justice. Like Young Justice definitely helps Nightwing's popularity a lot.
I stand by the fact that if Tim Drake had been the main character of that show, he would be a much more popular character than he is.
Oh, 100%.
Because they don't put him in anything
I
on screen.
stand I stand by the fact that they should have like 2 seasons that take place in between season 1 and 2 and just go over that time period, starting with um Dick's transition to Nightwing, like that time period, and then then the season after that would be about the new members of that were added to Young Justice that were essentially the original members from the comics.
That actually reminds me a little bit. I want to see a Green Arrow and Black Canary show in that art style. Because
I just want to see Black Canary anything.
I just want to see Black Canary, honestly. I love Ollie and I love Connor. Connor's one of my favorite DC characters of all time. But I just want to see Black Canary. I could like honestly, as bad as it sounds, I could really care less about the other two. That's not true because I really could. I love them so much, but it's just it's Dinah, man. Like you know, like it's Dinah, bro. Like ooh, you know, like
I mean, with Journey Smollett playing her and it in live action. Have you've seen what's that show with
Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft Country? There's I'm a 100% cut this out. This is just me and you having a conversation at this point. And we're back. You guys don't even know what we were talking about. But anyway, you reminded me of the fact that I've been thinking a lot recently about just a live action or animated Street Fighter series or films. And I would want it to take place in modern day, but I would want the first movie to feel like it's taking place in the 80s and for the second movie to feel like it's taking place in the 90s, but for them both to be actually taking place in like the in modern day, but it would feel like it's taking place back in those time periods when the games first came out. But anyway, back.
Honestly, I would really like that too because I do really like Street Fighter, and I feel like Street Fighter doesn't. I don't even give Street Fighter enough love. Like I do really like Street Fighter, and I like the characters and the
It's
lore.
because
But
Street Fighter 5 it's had such a rough start and it got better. But if you want to be able to play, well, now if you want to be able to play Street Fighter at its fullest, you can just pay for that. But if you bought Street Fighter day one, which I didn't get it day one, but I got it within like the first couple years it was out. If you got it within those first couple years, to be able to get a version of Street Fighter 5 that's actually a full complete game, you would have to pay just as much as you paid to get the game in the first place. And that really just hurt Street Fighter's everything lately. And was it Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? People didn't like that either. And that's another game that has a bunch of Street Fighter characters in it. They just Capcom hasn't been doing great with their fighting games recently. So the popularity of Street Fighter just hasn't been what it should be. if I'm being honest. Like but you know, they made a comeback in other areas. Like people didn't like Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 7, people loved it. Resident Evil 2 remake, people loved it. Resident Evil 3 remake, people were iffy on it, but they loved those other two Resident Evil games. What was it? Devil May Cry 5, people were excited for that. Like now they're back on track, and hopefully Street Fighter 6 is a return to form, and that they actually release a game that has a full damn roster instead of like 16 characters. And like I said, I think it was the last episode before that, how they didn't have like pivotal characters like E Honda, Sagat, Blanca, Akuma like in the main roster, which is ridiculous. But yeah, let's move on to comics. Speaking of Dino Lance, first things first, let's talk about DC Pride 2022. This June is gonna be dope. And I need more queer friends who read comics. I'm going to convince some more of my friends to read comic books because I need more people to be excited about this with me. So we're going to start off with your boy, Tim Drake. They're releasing a special called DC Pride Tim Drake Special, which would be a collection of his stories surrounding his coming out from urban legends, and a 64-page one-shot where he teams up with his former Young Justice teammates and the Batgirls. So that's interesting. Nubia will be getting another series because was Nubia and the Amazons was only 6 years, 6-issue miniseries, but now she's getting a continuation called Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, which she was Queen of the Amazons in Nubia and the Amazons, but now she'll be getting coronated, and I think there's gonna be a special one shot that's called like the something coronation of Nubia, and it will be leading directly into Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, which for people who don't know, Nubia is I believe she's gay. I don't think she's bisexual. She's gay. Multiversity, Teen Justice. A new book featuring Jesse Chambers, the future state Flash, who in this comic is Kid Quick, alongside a team of teen heroes from Earth 11. I've been wanting to see so much more Jesse Chambers because everything she pops up in the little bit of stuff she's popped up in, which is literally Future State Justice League, and I don't know if she was in Future State Flash. She was in Future State Justice League, and she was in. I keep saying she. It's a they. My apologies. They appeared in Future State Justice League, and it was in actually last year's DC Pride. They were in a one shot alongside Aquaman's daughter, Andy Curry, because they're in a relationship together. In the future, at least. Hopefully, they stick with that. And tons of other comics that have already come out are getting collected editions, like Aquaman the Becoming, Superman, and Nubia are getting collected editions with special covers for Pride Month. So that's dope. I'm excited for that. Aquaman. I read the first issue. Jackson's mother is still in a coma, and it's causing Jackson to like lash out at people and get really aggressive in battle. As insinuated at the end of Aquaman the Becoming, Black Manta is working with Aquaman to stop some impending doom. Dark Knights of Steel is wild. At the end of every issue, something crazy happens. I'm not gonna spoil it. I'll just leave it at that. Have you been keeping up with Dark Knights of Steel?
I literally have not read a comic in like a month since the last Nightwing issue came out. Not Nightwing 90 or whatever the newest Nightwing issue is, but the one where he teams up with John Kent for the first time. I didn't read the follow-up John Kent issue.
That was 89.
I haven't read much of any comics like at all. And I need to. I keep meaning to go back and read them, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I got a free month subscription to like, what is it called? Kindle Unlimited. So I've just been reading a bunch of comics that are available to me via Kindle Unlimited. And all of the comics available to me through Kindle Unlimited have just been comics I've been wanting to read for a long time. So I've been taking advantage of that. And one of those that I've been reading through Kindle Unlimited, and is low-key might have been the reason why I ended up getting Kindle Unlimited, and that's Animal Man. Because I was talking shit about Animal Man last episode, not gonna lie. And I told you that it was because for a long time, I confused Animal Man with Buana Beast, who is a completely different character with different but similar powers. He has the ability to like fuse people with animals and imbue those people with the abilities of those animals, and he can talk to animals. But that's not Animal Man. Animal Man can use the powers of animals near him for a limited amount of time. He's essentially Vixen, except he doesn't need a necklace, and it has a time limit. Still like Vixen more personally, but Animal Man is cool. I'm an Animal Man fan now. He's really cool. There is an issue.
At least you went from talking mad. You were talking some
Yeah,
mad
here's the thing
smack.
though. It
So
was
at
because
least you went from that.
I literally thought he was another character. I literally thought he was a completely different character, and he wasn't. It turns out I didn't know much about Animal Man, but now I know a lot. There's an issue where a Wile E. Coyote ripoff from like a different universe that's essentially Looney Tunes universe is sent to the DC universe because he was essentially the devil. He like conspired against God. Because he was tired of their life of hyper cartoon violence and just dying and reincarnating over and over again. So they sent him to the god sent him to the DC universe, where he now looks, instead of cartoony, kind of like Wile E. Coyote, he looks like a humanoid anthropomorphic coyote, and it's terrifying. And I first saw him, I thought he was Weasel from the Suicide Squad. And in the DC universe, he still has his like cartoonish immortality, except that it's not cartoonish anymore. When he gets killed, it's gory and it's horrifying. And he gets hit by I'm just spoiler alert for this entire issue. This issue is great. I'm just going to talk about the whole thing. He's hit by a truck at the beginning, and later on, that person who hit him with the truck accidentally went through a bunch of hardships, and they lost their husband, and then they came back blaming the coyote, which they thought was like the devil, and like it's their fault. So they came back with like a gun with like magical bullets in it to try and kill him. And Coyote doesn't want to hurt the person. It's just trying to run away, and this person is just hunting it down. And the Animal Man stumbles upon this situation, and that's a lot of what happens in the Animal Man comic. It's written by Grant Morrison, by the way. And a lot of what happens is that Animal Man is just out patrolling and then stumbles upon the most random of situations. He's like a bystander most of the time in his own story, but it's great. And Wile E. Coyote tries to get Animal Man's help, but I'm calling him Wile E. Coyote because that's basically what it is. But he can't speak English, and he can't write in English, so Animal Man's just confused. And then the person shoots the coyote with the magical bullet, and it actually kills him. But he actually feels at peace because Coyote wanted to die because he was immortal. It was weird, and if that doesn't convince you to read Animal Man, I don't know what will. Because
Welcome to Animal Man. That's all I gotta say.
That shit was crazy. It threw me off. I was like, "What is happening? Why am I reading this?" Oh my god, I need to talk about it, but I want an Animal Man series written and directed by James Gunn. He would do the character justice. I'm sure they're playing.
Now that's something I want to see animated in that animation style.
Yeah, Animal Man. I need Animal Man in my life, and I would want him to have like crossovers with characters like Vixen, because a big part of his character, from what I've read so far, I've only read the first volume. I'm about to start reading the second one later, is that he starts to essentially realize that he could do more for animals and the planet, and he starts there's a theme of animal rights that could be touched on in a series, and Vixen is also about that. So naturally, these two characters with similar powers, basically the same powers, will probably team up eventually and do some stuff. Why not? Hell, throw Beast Boy in there. Why not? Throw every animal themed character in there, just for a short team up for like an episode. But yeah, it's good. I like it. I've also been reading Darth Vader. I read I think 2017, 2018 run. It picks up right where Revenge of the Sith leaves off, where he's like yelling after he gets turned into Darth Vader. And it essentially shows everything that's been going on between then and the beginning of New Hope. And it was really good. Oh my God. Have you read the Vader comics?
Of course, I read the Vader comics. I read the Vader comics when they were first coming out.
Yeah, I'm starting to read the was it like 2014 or like 2016, 2017 run, which takes place in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and then I'm going to jump into the most recent one, which takes place after Empire Strikes Back, in between Return of the Jedi. But it's been good so far, man. It's been
that run is nuts.
But yeah, because I've been hearing about Dr. Aphra for a long time, and I was waiting for her to pop up in the there was a 2017-18 run, but she didn't. But then she popped up in the current run that I'm reading, the 16-17. And I'm like, okay, after I'm finished reading the Darth Vader comics, I'm gonna jump into Dr. Aphra. Have you read that?
Have I read Dr. Aphra?
Yeah.
I have read a little bit of Dr. Aphra. The majority of what I've read of Dr. Aphra has been in other comics, and I'm not a big Dr. Aphra fan. I mean, she's okay, but she's just like,
yeah, I'm watching it. Like, so far, I don't see what the hype is, but
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I didn't understand what the hype was about. Like,
I feel like the hype might come more from her actual comic than her appearances in other people's comics. So I'm gonna check it out eventually to see if the it lives up to the hype, because people be hyping Dr. Aphra up. But like,
people hype Dr. Aphra up, but it's like way too much. And I feel like that's what ruined it, because when she showed up in Darth Vader, I was like,
yeah,
okay,
I think
cool, I guess.
I like the idea of her character. I'm like, okay, I can get behind kind of what she's doing. I like her character, but like you said, like people might have overhyped her and made me not like the character as much as I should because of that.
I mean, in my opinion, she just doesn't really bring much of anything new that I haven't really seen before. And I'm just like,
yeah, I think this is the first Star Wars. These are the first Star Wars comics I'm sitting down and reading through. So I don't have much knowledge in that front to really compare it to outside of just the cartoons and the movies. So I can't really say that it's necessarily not something that I haven't seen before. So yeah. Hardware. Curtis's friends go on a live television to expose Elva, the person he was formerly working for making Curtis a scapegoat. But Curtis finds out that Elva used to work for the government and has deep connections, so his friends are in trouble, and he's sending metahumans after them. So we'll see where that goes. Hardware has been the best of the Milestone comics so far. Icon and Rocket has been up and down. Static has been kind of bland, if I'm being honest. The art's cool and all, but the writing hasn't been hitting very hard. I'm hoping the next arc that they do this summer is much more interesting. Radiant Red, there's a spinoff miniseries of Radiant Black called Radiant Red. I'm going to read the description. Satomi Shin is a diligent middle school teacher. To her fiance and parents, she's the rock of their family. To the world, she's Radiant Red, a criminal turned matter-absorbing superhero. But with a mysterious stranger in her classroom, a nosy reporter on her doorstep, and 2.5 million hidden in the air vents of her house, she's going to have to decide who she is and quickly before the world chooses for her. One of my favorite issues of Radiant Black so far was number 6, which introduced Radiant Red. It didn't introduce Radiant Red; it introduced her backstory and showed like how she became a bank robber and why she was robbing banks and ended up fighting Radiant Black. And it was she's probably my favorite character so far in the series, so I'm excited to dive deeper into her character, see what she's doing. Moving on to TV and film. You watch Umbrella Academy?
no, and I read the first couple issues of the comics and it was okay. And I watched the majority of the first season and it never hooked me. Like ever.
I really like Umbrella Academy. Season 3 premieres this June. I'm excited for it. I really like that show. Did you hear about Sam Raimi saying he would love to direct a Batman film? He said, and I quote, "I've always loved Batman. If I ever saw the bat signal up in the air, I'd come running. If I heard that deep, gurgling laugh of the shadow coming from the darkness, I would also tentatively step outside." What do you think about Sam Raimi directing a Batman film in the future?
I feel like he'd do a better job with a Bat Family show, but not about like a Bat, or not Bat Family movie, but not about like the entire Bat Family, specifically with the darker characters. Like give me Batman, Batwoman, Orphan, like some kind of like team up with like those three, and I could see it. I don't necessarily know that just Batman alone, or I don't really know. I haven't really given it much thought. That's just the first thing off the top of my head. I'm not too sure.
Okay. because you were tentative about it, I'm gonna let you off hook because I was about to say blasphemy, but no, you're good. But people were just disrespecting Sam Raimi on Twitter, and I was dumbfounded. I was just like, do people really don't think he could make a good Batman movie? Did these people only see Spider-Man and think that those were the only movies he's ever made in his entire life? Not only that, though, that's not the part that really, because people are like, oh, Spider-Man is was it campy and it's bright and cheery and blah blah blah. He can't make a Batman film. And that's the inherent problem with what the live action Batman films have done to the character of Batman. Made everybody think that the only version of Batman there can be is the dark, brooding one. Which me and you both know from watching tons of cartoons and reading
I
a lot of
hate.
comics. You can have the 60s Batman. You can have that. That exists. You can have Batman Brave and the Bold. You can have this goofy, and even then, here's the thing. Currently in the comics, I feel like, maybe not currently, but kind of the comics today, I feel like show off the fantastical and more eccentric and goofy side of Batman in combination with the dark, especially since he has such a large family. It's hard for him to stay this dark, brooding character all the time. And a lot of people, especially since we haven't had a Robin in a long time, and the movies where we did have Robin were so bad, people associate him with darkness so much. And it's like Batman can be like at the end of the Batman, where he's trying to become a symbol of hope and like justice instead of vengeance. Batman doesn't have to be the darkness and vengeance all the time. Like, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I was gonna say, I hate how people say, "Oh, Batman's all dark and gritty and yada yada yada." He's really not. Like there are their fair share. There's a fair share, especially in like the mid 2000s, of like really dark Batman stories. But Batman is actually a pretty hopeful character, and a lot of the time has a lot of light stories or a lot of
Also,
like.
and also goofy.
He can be goofy. He can be very goofy at times, and people seem to completely forget that. I'm like, you're missing out on an essential part of Batman. If Batman was all dark and broody all the time, hell, if Batman was dark and broody most of the time, it would still feel off because I wouldn't feel like Batman. Batman's not some super dark, super like broody, like he broods a lot, sure, and
Yeah.
he can be dark, but that's not all he is. It's not even most of what he is.
And I feel like hopefully they give us Robin in the next movie, especially since it would be his third year, and that would make sense. That's when he usually gets he adopts Dick. So, but also like I feel like Raimi, I believe you've seen The Evil Dead, and especially in The Evil Dead 2, which I think is probably, I don't know, I have to watch them again. It might be the better of the first two, and I feel like he mixes the horror and darkness with comedy really well in Evil Dead. Evil Dead is a really goofy horror movie. And it's also very campy, much like the Spider-Man films. And I think he could bring out that mix of goofiness and darkness and campiness in a Batman film. I feel like he could make his Batman films would be like a combination of Matt Reeves Batman and the 89 film, with a little bit more levity, I guess, because even those films try to take themselves a little bit too seriously. But even I feel like a big part of his character is he's serious even when everything's ridiculous, and that's funny in of itself. You know what I mean? Like a character being a straight man in a inherently ridiculous situation is
Yeah, I know what you mean. He
is,
is definitely the straight
yeah,
man.
is inherently comedic in itself. So to think that Batman is never somewhat funny is, and like, goofy is ridiculous. But anyway, I don't want to harp on that too much because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about before we wrap up. So I finally finished Doom Patrol season 4. I said season 4, season 3, which I struggled through because I told you before Doom Patrol was my favorite like live action comic book series. But this third season was testing my faith because that third season was a slog to get through. Um, uh, Something I've always liked about the show is how it can be weird yet still make sense and tell a compelling emotional story. This season does some weird stuff that isn't funny or intriguing, and it's very confusing. Um, we also continue to see the team deal with the same internal issues, and it feels like they've not made any progress. And to say that they've not made any progress is a lie, but it feels like they haven't, and that's a big problem. Like, just you can see that they've made progress, but you don't feel like they've made progress, and it gets frustrating. I can only handle so much of their incompetency and inability to get over their own, trauma, not trauma, because that sounds harsh, but like make steps forward, because the whole point of the show is that it's not easy for them to make progress. It takes time, but I still want to be able to see that progress be made, so that I see that we're building up to something rather than feel like we're rehashing the same thing over and over again. And now at the end of the season, it finally feels like they've made a step forward, and I hope they don't take 3 steps back and that they keep moving forward. They finally feel like they're actually a superhero team, and they're going to start doing superhero stuff, and they're going to make mistakes at first, which is a big part of the story, is that, and I like about it, is that they aren't perfect, but I need them to start just moving forward, making some progress. Not a fix, but a noticeable, some noticeable progress, significant progress. Moving on to Kenobi. You saw the trailer, of course. I honestly don't have much to say about the trailer. I think Grand Inquisitor looks weird. I think that what is it? The fifth brother looks weird. And I know a lot of people didn't like the way, not well, a decent amount of people didn't like the way Cat Bane looked. I think Cat Bane looked great. I think that when you look at characters like Count Dooku versus the actual actors' faces, it makes sense, the transition of what Cat Bane looked like in live action versus animated series, and I think he looked really good. The Grand Inquisitor, we've seen examples of his species in live action, and that person looks nothing like any other version of that species. And yes, all people of the same species don't look the same. We know this, but they don't look that drastically different as I feel like the Grand Inquisitor did in the trailer from what I've seen.
I'm so glad you said that, because I really thought you were about to try to defend the Grand Inquisitor's look in Kenobi, and I was about to say the exact same thing you did. We saw the exact species in live action, and it looked nothing like that.
Yeah, there. It's weird. Who made that decision and thought it was okay? um, I don't know.
Apparently, it was because it was hard to talk for the actor. That's why they changed it. But like, I'm okay with that sacrifice, because the Grand Inquisitor didn't like. I don't know, bro. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm just. I'm happy with I'm happy with the Revenge of the Sith version rather than this one. This one just doesn't look good to me.
Yeah, I'm not particularly jazzed about the design of those characters so far. The fifth brother, I also think, is a little iffy as well, in terms of the way he looks in comparison to the way he looked in Rebels. But I'm still excited for it. You know, I'm always gonna be excited for some Star Wars. They didn't show a lot, but they showed like an image of Darth Vader, but it's like super shadowed. You barely saw him, but I'm interested.
It's perfect.
So Ms. Marvel, there was a trailer, and she's a Green Lantern. We talked about this before, but we say that every podcast. We talked about this before because we have tons of our conversations away from the podcast, of course. But she's a Green Lantern. They changed her powers. In the comics, she has the ability to embiggen and stretch her limbs, not dissimilar to Mr. Fantastic, but unlike Mr. Fantastic, she can also like increase her size, like Ant-Man. So they decided to change it. People are assuming to make it visually different from Mr. Fantastic when he eventually comes, as well as Ant-Man, who already is there, who can also turn giant. So I kind of get that. Here's the thing, though. They didn't just visually change how her powers look to make it stand out. They completely changed her powers. from a VFX standpoint, I can understand CGI standpoint. I can understand that energy is probably easier to do than human skin, and that human skin might look weird, stretching and growing and things like that, and might bother some people. But they could have just had her stretching and embiggening powers look like energy instead of full on making her make constructs and separate from her body like a Green Lantern. Like if you made her extend her arm, but it's energy instead of her actual arm extending, I could get that. But that's not what they did. She's a Green Lantern. And from the standpoint of people who have read the comics, which I've read the first volume, but I don't remember much of it, and I didn't like it a lot. But for people who have, the reason they aren't a big fan of this change is because a big part of her story was kind of essentially growing comfortable with her skin, who she looks, who she is, and what her powers are, which can kind of be, to a lot of people, kind of gross because it can look weird, of course, when a human is stretching and growing. And a big part of her arc was accepting that. And it also being kind of like an allegory for her being a Muslim woman in America. So a lot of people are upset that that arc won't be able to be done properly because her powers have significantly changed and being made this pretty purple, glowy, sparkly power that's much more pleasing to for like the majority of people's eyes. And a lot of people don't like that. But her powers come from a bracelet, which opens the door up for the bracelet potentially breaking and them actually going the route of making her an inhuman, and then she actually has her stretching powers. So before like, what's your opinion on it?
Well, you know my opinion because we had a lengthy conversation about it when the trailer first dropped, and I'm not a fan of how this works at all. She is literally a Green Lantern, but with a bracelet instead of a ring, and I think that's ridiculous, and she can't fly. But honestly, at this point, what's one more power that she doesn't have, right? So, oh my god, so much I do not like about this. The show looks decent at the very least.
Yeah, the show looks like it'll be fun, which
but the powers were such an unnecessary change and really does defeat the purpose of Miss Marvel's original story.
It's clear why we don't like that change, but to be more on a more positive note, there have been a lot of people, especially young Muslim women, who have been like, excited for the show and happy for the show for that representation, and that is the best thing that's come out of this trailer. And like I said, the show looks like it'll be good. This change we feel is unnecessary, and it definitely is. People who have read those comics and love the character in the comics don't like that change, which is understandable. But the show will probably still be pretty good. If I'm being honest, I haven't been particularly impressed by any of the Marvel shows so far. I'm hoping Moon Knight will be the first, but we'll see. Moving on to video games. It'll be a while before we get to what is it? Hogwarts Legacy. So we're gonna start with The Quarry, a new game by Until Dawn and Dark Picture Anthology developer Supermassive Games. Here's a quick description of the game. It's late summer in the remote forests of upstate New York, and the teen counselors of Hackett's Quarry have the camp to themselves for one final night. That means no kids, no adults, and no rules. In this thrilling cinematic tale, you control the fates of all 9 camp counselors as their party plans unravel into an unpredictable night of horror with life or death decisions around every turn. The choices you make will determine how the story unfolds. So, tiny bit more info about how the game might play. In an interview with the creator, Will Biles, he says that this is a spiritual successor to Until Dawn. He says that he's a big horror buff and especially loves, coincidentally, Sam Raimi's work, and even has Raimi's brother Ted in the game, who I recognized him immediately when I went to their website and saw an image of the character he's playing, because he was in the second Spider-Man film. He was like Doc Ock's like assistant in like the first experiment that went wrong. Like I recognized his face immediately from that movie because I've seen it 1,000 times. There's little Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, and The Hills Have Eyes in the game. And they're taking most of the inspiration from 80s horror, but it takes place in modern day. There's even a bit of Texas Chainsaw because there's like a creepy family involved. Yeah, it looks intriguing. Um, and much like the Dark Pictures anthology, which you watch Bertolisi, you love Bertolisi. You've probably seen him in the some bros play the
Of
Dark Pictures
course,
anthology.
literally every video.
Um, and yeah, you know how those games work. And I'm hope and if this game's good, I kind of I'm hoping that me, you, some of the friends in our Discord can hop on and play that because we all have PlayStations. So that could be fun. And I love me specifically 80s horror because I love slashers. So they're definitely
I also love slashers. They
it's
are
definitely
one
up
of my favorite movie genres.
it's definitely up my alley. So I'm excited to see what they do.
I am a big fan of supermassive games. I'm also a big horror fan, and it feels kind of weird to say I'm a horror fan, but also a fan of supermassive because their style of horror isn't exactly very good because it's really just a lot of jump scares. But I like the stories that they tell and the elements that they put in them. That said, I'm still not entirely on board with this
Yeah, me neither.
because this feels very Until Dawnish. And if you look at their roadmap for their season 2 for Supermassive, did you play or at
Well,
least
now I'm
watch
not on board anymore.
you said what?
I said, well, now I'm not on board anymore because I think Until Dawn is still their best game. And if it's looking Until Dawnish, then I'm excited because I still think that's their best game so far.
I mean, I don't think it's their best game personally. I think that their best game has been their newest one. I don't remember what it was called. House of Ashes. I think their best game is House of Ashes, both mechanically, graphically, story wise. But season 2 promises to be a lot like if you go back and you look at their games progressively have gotten a lot more what's unique and just I'm not want to say weird, but like they've touched on a lot of themes that haven't really been touched on or in like the horror video game genre or redone and like given their own spin on like shows or not shows on like horror themes and
So
like done a really good job of it the further along they've gotten with these games. And I feel like this is I don't want to say taking a step back, but like when you look at their roadmap, this kind of is not at all like what I thought it was going to be, if that makes any sense.
what did you think it was going to be?
Honestly, I didn't even know the Quarry was a supermassive game. I thought it was gonna be something like Friday the 13th or something like that, like one of those type of games. But I was I don't I don't really know. I wasn't entirely sure what it was gonna be when I first saw it, when I first saw it on their timeline, but or on their roadmap. But like if you look at their roadmap, they have stuff like they're going to be doing like Alien, like their take on Alien. They're going to be doing their take on some Lovecraftian themes and stuff like that. And this just sort of going back
Hey,
to
yo, that
the
sounds dope. That alien one, but that's essentially what they're also doing with this though. They're doing their own take on 80s horror. Like
they are, but I feel like
they're not just
that's
going Friday the 13th. They're gonna take a combination of things and make something, their own.
no, like I get that, but I feel like they to an extent have done that already with previous games, and I felt like they were moving past that. And it feels like that's not what this game is going right back to that. But then again, House of Ashes wound up being something entirely different than what they advertised in a good way, as far as like the themes and like the story involved. So maybe it may, I don't know. I don't know.
But okay, moving on to the first PlayStation State of Play. They showed this game by Capcom called Exoprimal, which is essentially a co-op horde-based survival game, kind of like Left 4 Dead, except you're in an exosuit and the zombies are dinosaurs. And there is like I'm talking like literal like hordes of like velociraptors. It looks interesting, but it looked kind of Anthem-ish. If it wasn't Capcom, that would give me pause, but because it's Capcom, it looks like it might be interesting. I don't know if I'll necessarily play it. I'll probably watch some people play it, but it's coming out in 2023. They showed more Forspoken, and every time they show it, the powers and traversal look so cool, but outside of that, it does not look interesting at all. The enemy design looked cool in this trailer. Hopefully they'll be fun to fight if I ever play it. The official release date is October 11th this year because it got pushed back. But yeah, it doesn't. It's just nothing about it is making me go, yeah, I want to play that. So yeah. Anything to say about Forspoken?
Day one pre-order, I'm getting the most expensive version of the game that I can, and I'm going to be playing it nonstop because I am looking forward to it. Like it's just a big draw for me is Ella Belinsky, but we're not gonna talk about that now. Meanwhile,
we're not gonna pull a Smollett, okay? That
yeah, I'm not gonna pull a Smollett here. However, that's not the only thing that's driving me because I'm really interested in the story. I'm really interested in the world and like the magic system and the lore and the powers and gameplay look fun. And while it seems like an empty world from what we've seen so far, it also seems like a really, really, really massive world. So I feel like we haven't even seen like a third of it. It could be it could really be dense, like densely filled with a lot of stuff. That's what I'm hoping is the case.
And if the traversal is fun enough, the how empty it is won't be too big of a deal if it's just fun to run around. Like they keep showing these shots where like you hop on water and like the character makes like a surfboard out of like ice and it looks cool. Like the powers look so cool, but outside of that, none of it interests me. And so I'm hoping eventually we see like extended gameplay, or when the game comes out and I watch some people play it, I might actually gain some interest. Maybe at E3 they'll actually show some more gameplay. Trek to Yomi, a black and white side-scrolling samurai game that looked really damn cool. That might be a day one purchase for me. It looked really interesting. I might have to send you the trailer if you haven't seen it. It looked really cool. But we have reached this point in time where we're going to go on. Not even, this isn't even a Harry Potter. This is scheduled. This is your regularly scheduled programming. We're not going on a Harry Potter, but we'll be talking about Harry Potter.
It's a scheduled Harry Potter about a Harry Potter.
Exactly. We might go on some Harry Potters in this Harry Potter segment. But before we even begin discussing the actual game,
gotta say, if this is somebody's first listen to it, like if this is somebody's first episode, they're probably so confused a couple of seconds ago.
We call tangents Harry Potters because the first tangent we ever went on was about Harry Potter. So before we talk about the game, I want to talk about J.K. Rowling and our opinions of her and make them very clear, because every episode could be someone's first episode. So let's start off by saying, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we do not like J.K. In fact, I would say personally that I hate her. And
you hate J.K. Rowling.
Everything she stands for. Nobody on this podcast likes her. We do not agree with any of her anti-trans views in any way whatsoever. But we do like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So
not even just anti-trans views either. I watched a retrospective on all of her work and like a lot of her statements and stuff. She's very subtly racist and misogynistic and sexist in ways that I didn't even realize. I was like, whoa, like she's not a good person.
All around horrible person. But we do like the world of Harry Potter. So you'll find us talking about it occasionally. On here, you'll hear us call tangents Harry Potters. So just know, just because we like the world of Harry Potter doesn't mean we like Rowling. So for me personally, as transphobes continue to spread their harmful influence with JK keeping up with her BS and false rhetoric, and the recent laws targeting the LGBT plus community in America, I'm ever more critical of myself. And I want to make more of an effort to listen more carefully to trans people and respond in kind. Because looking back on the episode titled "Is Dave Chappelle a TERF?", I feel like I reacted too quickly without properly listening to what trans people were saying. And I clarified further, about the things I said in a few episodes back. But I want to make it even clearer than ever before that I believe that trans women are women, no ifs and buts about it, and no technicalities like Dave Chappelle discussed in his what is the word I'm looking for? Special. And the joke of which I was defending. Again, if you want to hear about that, you can go back and listen to that episode. So yeah, I just want to make that very clear, just in case anybody heard that episode and then see this, because I might clip this and go and are confused. I want to make how we feel about JK very clear. Now let's talk about the game. Actually, a little more. I didn't realize exactly how many notes I wrote. Because I actually want to talk about a quote that I wrote. That I copied from a article from GameSpot by a trans person named Jesse Earl. So they said, "You're not a bad person if you want to play Hogwarts Legacy. Many trans people themselves are planning to buy the game, despite their justified anger towards Rowling. Yet, the important thing is not to condemn the game or renounce your love of Harry Potter, it's to wrestle with the complexity of it and decide for yourself. Trans people don't get to ignore the pain the franchise has become intrinsically linked to, and those who wish to care for them shouldn't get to do so either. You don't get to defend Rowling or Harry Potter and not understand what that actually means to a trans person or the ramifications it has for all of us, not just trans people. If I'm not mistaken, you plan on getting the game."
Yes, I do plan to get the game.
Right. And as someone who knows and respects Amir, I know that, like we just said, he doesn't like it. He hates her. But that doesn't mean he wants to deprive himself of enjoying content from that world that he loves, that she just so happened to create and is making money off of. I personally don't feel comfortable putting money in her pocket, so I won't be playing the game. I still think Harry Potter is great, and it has Star Wars level of potential in terms of its world, especially if other creators are allowed to play with it. But until she drops dead, or somehow is no longer able to make money from it, I personally won't be purchasing or like watching anything really. But Amir will, and that's okay. I just want to make that clear because he's not supporting her. He just wants to play Harry Potter, or he wants to watch Harry Potter, or he wants to read Harry Potter. And I just want to make it abundantly clear that does not mean he supports JK. And nobody on here does. And anybody we ever have on this podcast never will. So let's actually talk about the actual game, because I only watched it twice, but the second time really made me like the game and made me go, that looks good. I will be watching so many people play that game. So I didn't take any notes, too many notes about what they showed us. So you're gonna have to take the lead here. Because you watched it like 6
Okay,
times.
so it'll be easier for me to talk about what I didn't like about the trailer than what I did, because there's so much that I loved about the trailer, and really only one thing that I didn't like, that I'm not even necessarily going to say that I didn't like, it was just that it threw me off a little bit. The combat is not very Harry Potter-ish, if that makes any sense, because you just see your one player character standing in an arena full of like enemies all shooting at you, and you just kind of whew, like you're just kind of like firing at them. And I'm like, if there's one thing that I have a complaint about as far as previous Harry Potter games, is that they're all kind of just like third person shooters with magic, because that's pretty much what they wind up becoming. Like you're just hiding behind cover the entire time. But it's just the fact that they didn't really show you going behind cover at all. And in Harry Potter, in both the books and the movies, you see characters like use cover a lot, because wands are dangerous and magic is dangerous, especially when used to attack another
Yeah,
person.
I made a tweet a long time ago saying like it must be horrifying to be a wizard in the wizarding world, because it's essentially like if every person had a gun at all times, because anybody could potentially learn the killing curse of Abacadabra. Anybody. So at any time, someone could pull out their gun and shoot you. It must be horrifying.
That actually reminds me of a video I saw that it was basically saying Avada Kedavra is the stupidest thing ever, because it's literally the wizard equivalent of having a gun, but just more complicated. And the wizards might as well just carry firearms, because you could literally just do the exact same thing. And I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, that makes sense.
I've heard people have arguments of like, okay, if the entirety of all wizards on a planet went against the entirety of all humans, what would happen? And talk about how, well, humans have guns and they could just shoot the wizards.
Pretty much what would happen. I mean, wizards are very powerful in Harry Potter, like incredibly powerful. And I feel like the average wizard would kill the average human, even with a gun, because I feel like Protego could probably block a gun, or could
Can they
probably,
block a
not even
nuke?
probably, it could definitely block a bullet, because they block like harder to block stuff. It's just bullets are too fast, like way too fast, that I don't think there's any Harry Potter character that has like hypersonic reaction speeds. And there's way more humans than there are wizards, like way more. And we also have biological weapons and nuclear bombs. I have no doubt in my mind that humans would win. It's not a competition. And I have not seen a wizard use a gun. And I think that's ridiculous because I feel like wizards just really should just start carrying firearms. Harry Potter would have
They
been
should
over so
have
quick.
some type of magical gun.
Harry Potter would not even magical, like literally just get like a Glock or something. Like Harry Potter would have been over so quick if Voldemort had an AK or something. Like it would have been gone. It would have been over for Hogwarts.
I mean, even spoiler alert. I mean, Harry did, die. The boy who died come to die. Like,
But I mean, like and here's the thing. If Voldemort used I'm trying so hard not to cuss. If Voldemort used like a revolver or something and shot Harry instead of trying to use magic to kill him, Harry wouldn't have come back. If you shoot Harry in the head, he's dead. I don't care. I don't care.
Okay. We're going on to Harry Potter. I need you to focus. Tell me what.
Right. So also another thing that I didn't like about the combat, which I didn't think about until I went back and I rewatched some of old Harry Potter fights. There was something throwing me off about the combat that wasn't just them not standing behind cover. It wasn't just them like standing out in the open, which I still think is ridiculous. But one thing that threw me off that I didn't realize until I went back to go watch it, the magic in Harry Potter in combat is smart and intentional, and like you can kind of see it in the trailer a little bit, but the combat is way too fast paced, I feel like, in the trailer, because in Harry Potter, in the movies at the very least, and even in the books when I went back to go read, there's thought put into the spells that they cast, at least up until the last two, up until the Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2.
You want a turn-based combat Harry Potter game?
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. What I want is a more patient. You don't ever, you know how I feel about turn-based combat. Don't do that to me. But what I want is more thoughtful combat at the very least, or maybe like a stamina meter that like you can't just.
My understanding of magic in Harry Potter, it can become very fast-paced if they wanted to, especially if you're skilled. So
it certainly can, but
like the way, to me, the combat looked really cool, and they definitely wanted to be more accessible and more like just like an action game, so that people can jump in and just start tossing magic at people.
But that's not. I don't know. I'm not gonna complain too hard about it because it really is my only complaint.
And it's also like it's all like combative magic. Like they aren't necessarily fighting people who are using magic in a smart, or particularly smart way, but all just using magic specifically used for combat. So it's all just quick blast and like restraints and stuff like that. And I think it makes sense for the specific type of magic they're using to for combat, for it to be much quicker paced.
I'll say this. If you go back and watch the Ministry of Magic fight from Order of the Phoenix, and you go back and you watch that fight,
it was a turn-based combat fight.
It was not turn-based. No, I mean, like even at the beginning, or not even the beginning of the fight, with the Aurors fighting the Death Eaters, not just Voldemort versus Dumbledore. Although, see, that would be that to get to that level of magic would be crazy in that game. Could you imagine like shattering like all the glass in Hogwarts and like shooting it like at darts at somebody?
They did say in the state of play that like the main character like possesses access to like a type of magic like the teachers don't know about or something like that. Like
I don't know. It just feels a little too fast paced for me, which like I guess is not really an issue. Maybe it'll feel different in the game. We also only saw like 15 minutes of gameplay, so maybe it could be different. I don't really know. But everything else I loved so much. Oh my god, I'm so excited for this game.
We got time. We got we had an hour 10 minutes. We got like 20 minutes.
Okay. So there was a leak a while ago, which some of which was very clearly proven false in this, but some of it was actually proven right. About Hogwarts Legacy that said the game would continue past your time at Hogwarts, and you would become an Auror at the end of the game, and all your decisions in the game would be in this end game content. And I really kind of want to see that. And I felt like that was shown at least a little bit, like the possibility of that. Because there were multiple scenes where you weren't wearing Hogwarts clothes and you clearly were not in Hogwarts or Hogsmeade. And it's a little weird to see a student just leave campus because that doesn't really happen. Like you were like far outside of Hogwarts.
Yeah, they did say
And
also that you'll be like working with one of the teachers in some type of investigation for some reason. So that probably is part of the reason why they go out and do stuff that normal students wouldn't be able to do. Like the character you play as has some type of ability. Like they started school late and they have some type of ability that is like special. Like there's something special about them.
excuse me, I was burping. I did see like yeah, that's also believable, but I'm choosing to believe in my mind, at least for right now, that you will become an Auror by the end of the game because I want a game where you play as an Auror so bad.
Yeah, so a lot of people are calling this game like a mix of bully and like Harry Potter and like being able to go through it take various different classes that you would take in Harry Potter. You know, you get sorted into your house and yeah, stuff like that, which I would assume that there's a way for you to kind of guarantee which house you go to, because otherwise, and if I played it, I would just restart the game until I got Slytherin. So I feel like to prevent that, there has to be some type of for sure, like surefire way to get the house that you want, like to get into the house that you want to get into.
Every time I see somebody talk about the sorting, like the possibility for sorting in this game, I feel like people forget the fact that the sorting hat literally takes into account what house you want to be in. Like Harry literally blatantly was like, "Don't put me in Slytherin," and the sorting house was like, "Bet." Like it takes into account what you don't want to be in. So I'm pretty sure you can choose your own house if you're not satisfied with the result that it gives you.
But yeah, riding a broom looks fun. There are very few games that allow you to just fly. Like there needs to be more games where you can just fly and you aren't in like a jet. Hell, when you aren't even in a broom, like your character can just fly. But it makes sense in Harry Potter, you'll be in a broom, obviously. And just having the ability to fly is fun. And I'm glad to see that. Of course, it would be weird if they didn't let you. They didn't show Quidditch, but I have a feeling you will probably be able to play Quidditch.
They wouldn't have shown you being able to fly on a broom if you couldn't play Quidditch.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Quidditch would look like in this game. The game comes out later this year at E3. I wouldn't be surprised if they had the demo and show some more stuff. So yeah, this game looks cool. You have any more to say?
Just that this game looks amazing, and I hope it's as amazing as it looks, and Ravenclaw forever. And also, if it doesn't, why I feel like it should just link to Pottermore. Like you should just be able to link it to Pottermore, and like you'd get your Patronus type, your house, and your wand type from there. I feel like it would just be easier to do that, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention this at the top, but I've been watching so much Community because I finally started rewatching it. Oh man, I love Community so much. It's so good and so funny. I love everything about it. But yeah, that's all we got, folks. I'm Dijon, as usual. My answer below me, both Instagram and Twitter. Amir's ad is below him, and below that is the Mustcast ad. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more storytelling content, and then click the notification bell so that you're notified when we post. I stumble along with that every time.